Namaskar, kia ora, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to all our viewers from New Zealand, from the Pacific, Fiji, Australia. We know there are heaps watching in India, and also from Europe and America. Thank you very much for joining us today, February 20th, weekend or on Sunday at 5. I'm your host. My name is Sunil Kaushal. It's been a great week in New Zealand as such. We won our first gold medal in the Winter Olympics skiing. Congratulations to Zoe. And after 18 years, we finally defeated the South Africans in cricket, though it was in our backyard. But if you look at the scores, anyone following cricket would be very proud, especially if you're a Black Cap supporter. However, all respect to the South Africans because they didn't use the isolation and MRQ and quarantine as an excuse, but I think the next test match will be really good. The women's cricket team from India is also playing the Black Ferns here in New Zealand, and unfortunately it hasn't been easy going for them, for the Indian team, but great for the Kiwis. We also see the Super Rugby starting up this week. In politics, there has been somewhat strange things happening in Wellington, which is the capital of New Zealand, with the anti-mandate occupiers taking up the land, the occupation in the parliament. And there are both sides of the story to it. But we hope for the sanity of people that this occupation, this protest ends quickly and we can all go on and move on with our lives. Unfortunate for those businesses who are really suffering, not only because of this occupation and protest, but also because of COVID and the rent light system. And I know personally there are a lot of businesses that are, after so many years, folding up. What about the other politics that has been happening? We see the Auckland mayor, Phil Goff, saying that he will not be standing again for the elections. So that leaves a big hole in the local politics in Auckland. And today, to discuss local politics, what it is about, how does it work? Because in New Zealand, we have so many different levels of politics for local bodies. How does local body work? So we've got 4 different local body people here joining us today. A couple of them are councillors, one from a local board and one from the community board. It's my privilege, firstly, to invite Councillor Gwynn Compton, who is from Kapiti Coast. Gwynn has been there for this term, and unfortunately, he's not looking forward. He's not standing up again. However, we also have Councillor Linda Cooper, who will be joining us. Linda has been on the local council for a number of years. This will be her 3rd term finishing, 4th term. And then we're also joined by the local body member, Ella Kumar. Ella has been there for many years, probably coming up 12 years now. And also we are joined by Shirish Paranjape, who is from Christchurch. Actually, Linda is from Auckland, Ella is from Puketapapa local board, and Shirish is from Christchurch, representing Foundation-Waimairi-Harewood Community Board. So welcome to all the 4 of my guests today. Thank you so much for taking time out. Today we also see a number of cases rising up in COVID, and around about 2,522. And the booster shots is also going up. We see that Christchurch and Canterbury and Kapiti Coast are leading the way in this. Gwynn, as a councillor, you must be happy that your people are listening to get a booster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've obviously got a demographic that skews towards the older end of the spectrum. So we've got a lot of people who are quite vulnerable to COVID. So it's really pleasing to see that people have taken the health advice on board and getting their 3 shots.
That's great. Linda, coming to you, a lot of people must be wondering, what is this? You know, we got Shirish from a community board. and Ella from local board, and you and Gwynn are councillors. Can you just explain briefly just the role of a councillor? And I'll get Ella and Shirish to explain their roles later on.
Okay, namaste, Nisam Bulavanaka, everybody. Yeah, well, in Auckland, it's somewhat unique. We even have our own individual part of the Local Government Act called the Auckland Amendment Act. And a councillor in Auckland is a councillor for the whole Auckland region, which goes from Tahana Way in the north down to Franklin area just before Pocono. And if you think about wherever you live locally, if it's not in Auckland, you have a regional council and your local council. Well, we're what's called unitary, so the two are joined together. And in fact, it's almost as if with someone like, as a councillor, we're called the governing body, and we make the sort of big funding decisions, we set the rates, set the strategies and policies for Auckland, the planning, those sorts of things. And then the co-governance or the co-governance partners are the local boards, of which Ella is a member in Puketapapa, or Mount Roskill, as some of you might know it. And so the local boards do a lot more of the local area. But I suppose from my point of view as a councillor, I spend most of my time pre-COVID in the city and in the town hall. But at the same time, we're elected locally. We're not elected at large. So I'm from the West. So at the same time as doing that full-time regional job, I need to make sure that I'm in contact with my local people. So I do a lot of evening and weekend meetings and making sure I'm keeping up with what's going on in my patch as well, so that can be fed into the wider decisions.
That's great. And we do know and appreciate your hard work, Linda. Shirish, what's the difference in your area of work, given it's a community board?
Yeah, so in Christchurch, we have a 3-level system. The mayor is elected by the whole city. Then, like Linda said, there are councillors which come from each ward, and each ward also elects 1 or 2 community board members who represent them. So in your introduction, you said Foundation-Waimairi-Harewood. I have been elected by the residents of Waimairi, but the board is 3 wards joined together, which is Pendleton, Waimairi-Harewood. And as soon as you come onto the board, you become responsible for the entire board, not just your ward. And like Linda said, the responsibility of a board member is to listen to the community. And in Christchurch in particular, the community board is the link between the residents and the council, the local residents, which are in northwest of Christchurch. So that's how the community board works. And like Linda said, the council collects the rates from all the residents. They take major decisions which influence the whole city.
Yeah,
but any local decisions.
I'll come back to that one before, just quickly, because I just want an understanding for our audience to know what is what. Ella, you represent the Puketapapa local board. Just like Shirish. So is your role different? Does the local board in Auckland have authority over things? Or is it just the councillors?
Yeah, I would say that we work as teams. So regardless, it's a regional decision, then a local decision that goes with it. So we do work as a team. I think the community board would be very much the same as a local board elected members position in the way we say the names. Before I got elected on Super City time, the area was a community boards. That's what they were called. So the Super City made the new name. Now we're local board members, and I think the jobs are exactly the same. We are the ones that make the local decisions for local assets, and sometimes some of these local assets are regional and regionally reached, and then of course our decision makers are our councillors. But we like to work as a team, I think, and I think we do where we can, and I think that's how we reach the better outcomes for our communities.
So, Gwynn, thanks. Gwynn, I'll come to you. Now, given that you are very close to the central government sitting down there, yeah, and from a councillor's point of view, does the central government is the central government involved in decision making? For example, for Kapiti Coast, or is it and the classic example is the transmission gully? Yeah. Does the local council have say in such shovel-ready project?
Well, we sort of, when you get into that bigger infrastructure project like Transmission Gully or the expressways that have been going through here, we obviously advocate and lobby for those sorts of things to get them built, because it's one of those things where those bigger infrastructure projects that are required to unlock the potential for growth in a region, most councils in the country, bar say Auckland, don't have the resources to do it. So we need central government to come in and do them. So we definitely have a role in terms of advocating and lobbying for our community. But when it comes to those big sort of, I guess, infrastructure projects that sort of connect our region to other regions are generally the purview of central government or regional council if you're talking public transport projects.
So Gwynn? So you mentioned about the demographics in the starting of of the program. So do your people have specific needs in that region that are different to what might be in Wellington or Auckland?
Look, I think once upon a time in Kapiti, there was a perception that we were sort of a retirement village, and you had this overwhelming population on superannuation here, and you had sort of a focus on public transport and the accessibility to Wellington and on that, and how you move people about the district. I think the big change we've had in the last sort of 15 years has been there's a lot of young families coming up here now, and that's the second fastest growing demographic we've got here, because they've been forced out of Wellington by the housing crisis there, which has now put pressure on things like schools and healthcare services and all those things that go with a sort of young and rapidly growing population. So I think we're sort of now starting to fit into, I guess, a more standard demographic profile, whereas in the past, Kapiti was sort of seen, I guess, slightly isolated and removed. And obviously that's all going to change one day when Transmission Gully eventually opens.
Oh, that's great. But that most of the the civil servants who are retiring, they do move to Kapiti. So, and do you still have the airport?
We still, at the moment, we do still have an airport. There's obviously a discussion going underway by the owners of the airport there about what they're going to do, and they're engaging with the local hapu, Puketapapa, about what their vision is for the site as well. And there's been discussions of central government about that as well. So that's an ongoing thing, and we're sort of, taking a watching brief to see what happens there.
Sure. Linda, a question for you that has just come. Is there any benefit in voting since the local boards are controlled by central government or politics?
There's always a benefit in voting. I don't care who people vote for. We are lucky to live in a country where we have that right. We don't have to queue for hours under the hot sun or be at risk of being shot or, the thing is the government does have quite a bit of control over councils. One Gwynn talked about was funding, and people think Auckland have got all the money. We have so many more people, and it's all relative. We have to provide so much more and have so much more growth. So it's all relative. We all rely on government funding. So basically, if you're elected, you have to work with whatever government you've got, whether you like them or not. You've got to work with them because they got the money. I know that some people have political tickets. I'm independent, and I think Shirish was saying he was independent. I don't know about Gwynn, but
yeah.
Personally, I think there's no place for central party politics in elected members on councils, but that's my view. But we know that some political parties go hard out to try and capture the whole country. But
I'll come to you.
But from working with some people, like my fellow councillor is on a central party politic ticket, I know sometimes they get the nod what they have to do, but quite often they don't. So it all depends on the personality.
Sure. Ella, I'll come to you in the local body politics, and you seem to be agreeing with Linda. Why should people come out as independent or vote for independent in central politics?
Well, I don't necessarily think it has to be independent, but I do agree on the sense that definitely there's no room for politics at local board level. I see it very much like your schoolyard, and you've got every single child in that schoolyard you've got to look after, and these are your people in your community. Whether they are politically pushed in the community, that's their decision, and they actually will come to you with that. But as a board member, I think we pretty much take the oath, and the oath is we actually look after every single person in that community. So if anyone's coming in with a political push and having political outcomes, that's wrong. And I hope the community pick that up. I strongly feel even our tickets, there are reasons these tickets are put into place. I've been an advocate for so long, and I pretty much say that your ticket that you go with should be one that's neutral. And I hope the one I've got is neutral. It may not be at different levels, but the level that I'm at the local board level, I can put my hand on my heart and say I've stayed neutral.
Sure. Shirish, you have been a local community board member for a long time. What pushed you to get into that?
It was interesting that, post the Christchurch earthquakes, we had a meeting organized by Office of Internal Affairs, and we had one councillor who was from an ethnic background, and a migrant himself. And he said to us in the room, saying, we have so many different ethnicities in Christchurch, and so many people in this room. I am the only elected member who is from an ethnic background. So why don't some of you try? And Councillor Jimmy Chen, motivated me to get in, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, I think Rafiq was also there, and now he leads a party. That's great. Gwynn, what do you think are the main issues down in Kapiti at the moment?
Well, the big one here, and I think this is pretty universal across most of the country, in terms of local body politics anyway, is just how do you manage growth? We've gone from a situation in Kapiti where we were sort of, I think we've doubled our population every 30 years for the last 60 years, basically. And that's just picking up pace. And we're just struggling to fit everyone in. I think we're one of the most expensive housing markets, not only in the Wellington region, but in the whole country. And there's always this fraught pressure between people not wanting their communities to change, but then housing becomes so unaffordable that forces change on communities as well. So there's trying to balance up those two things. So that's one of the big things. And I think the other one, and it's always there, is always just the affordability of local government in general. We've seen, I think in the last couple of years, there's been some pretty big rate rises, especially down this end of the country. And that's putting pressure on people's wallets, especially when you look at inflation has gone up. That's going to be a really hot topic, because we've seen inflation in particular in the construction sector. There's big infrastructure things that local government's having to roll out. That's going to put a lot of pressure on councils and the sort of decisions and trade-offs that they're going to have to make going forward.
Gwynn, just a quick question that has come through. Is there any benefit for renters to vote in local bodies?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the key things that councils, at the moment at least, we still decide on is basically how cities grow and the planning that underpins that. So, if you want your city or your district to have more affordable housing or that sort of thing, you get involved. I mean, renters, they use all our services, they use our roads, our footpaths, our parks, our libraries, sports facilities, all those things. I mean, you're as much a citizen of your district or your city as a homeowner and a ratepayer as you have, and you should be equally as involved in local body politics as everyone else.
Yeah, I think most, there is a conception or there's a misunderstanding out there that local body is just for homeowners because they pay rates. And, I think all of you would agree and probably give me 5 minutes of speech around why people should be involved. And I think, it's a collective effort that we need to get everyone involved in local body and to have their say, because Linda, you would agree that, the majority of the things that people can control or the local council can control does affect everyday person, either they are renting or they are owning the house. Would that be true?
Yeah, well, I think Local Government New Zealand, which is an association of all the local governments, made a video once, and I said, oh, you should make a video, and they said, we've done it. Basically, from the moment you get up in the morning, when you go to the loo and flush it, that's the council. When you turn the tap on to wash your hands afterwards, brush your teeth, make your cup of tea, Take your library book back, go on the footpath, put your rubbish out, your street lights, everything, just about everything, even going to a restaurant. That has got a license that the council have checked that that's safe. There's so many things, as Gwynn was saying, you don't, it's so in your life, you don't notice it. And so everybody needs to have a say on that, because how do we know what people think? Otherwise, it's just a bunch of people got elected making up our own minds. And I really like to hear what people think, good and bad.
Yeah, that's great. Look, one of the issues I think we're probably going to see it a lot in the coming years is around climate change. And I mean, it's a reality. Some may think it's a conspiracy theory, etc. Well, everyone's got an opinion, everyone's got a belief. But majority of the people around the world in New Zealand do believe that climate change is important. So I just want for our viewers to understand, and maybe starting from the local board, Ella, that how does climate change affect the local residents? And then I'll come to Gwynn and Linda, obviously from different parts of New Zealand, how your councils are looking at it, and then Shirish. Ella, so what do you think of climate change in the local board and how you can impact it?
Yeah, so I think local boards, and I think I know that the majority have, but we make plans up. So we have a local board plan that we actually work with, like a document where we allocate money. And having one of the outcomes as looking at ways of making these changes happen, because we know that our communities can't do it in one day. So we need to plan it. So strategically, some changes can happen that may be looking at the central government and our Auckland Council, in my case, council, but your regional body, looking at their plans and how can we meet so we actually can help them achieve the plan that they've got overarching all of our city. So a local board can help by doing that. Yeah.
Ella, can you give me an example of like what would Puketapapa be looking at, maybe from a climate change, maybe not this year, but 10 years down the road?
Yep, we've got a group from the low carbon group who have come into our group, our organisations, taking up a little bit of funding to help out set small outcomes with our community by educating them first about what is climate change anyway. We've got a lot of diverse communities in our area, and some people may not even understand the words what climate change means to them and how they can make some basic little changes. So we've got education happening day after, as much as we can, especially with the COVID, it's been difficult, but using what we can, like on Facebook and live and stuff, they've been educating our community. What is climate change and how can they reach it? And what small thing can they do to make a change?
So, Shirish, how is climate change affecting your board and what are you doing?
Yeah, so it can affect in things like planning bus routes, for example, feeding the voice of the community to the bus route planners, or cycleway planning. How do people reach their neighborhood schools or library or swimming pools? Because the farther you drive, the more you are contributing to use of petrol or things like that. So how to minimize that by better planning, make things accessible locally to the residents so that everything is nearby. They don't have to drive cross country to reach there. So that's one example.
Gwynn, your Kapiti, you can see that in a sense, okay, it's an old established place, but obviously it's booming and it's in a way, when you drive through that not Transmission Gully, but down the highway, you can see Kapiti growing. So it's all, to someone coming from outside, it's a new city, it's a booming city. How are you, how is the council like yourself and maybe other councils, maybe the Opurtaki Council or, the Wanganui Council, how do they plan, not 5 years or 10 years, but, 30 years when climate change is a reality and we are surrounded by sea?
Yeah, well, you raise a really good point there when you talk about driving through Kapiti. And what a lot of people don't realise is that Kapiti might be about, I think it's about 44 kilometres long, but we're only ever, in terms of from the coast to the foothills, about 5 kilometres wide. And so we're going through a process at the moment where we're getting a whole lot of coastal assessment risk modelling done, which is around all the coastal erosion that we're facing. Just in the last 2 months, I think we've had 3 1 in 100 rainfall events. So there's a whole lot of surface flooding. And Kapiti, obviously, essentially used to be a whole lot of wetlands. And there's an argument to say that they're trying very hard to re-establish themselves with all the rainfall that comes with climate change. So a lot of the decisions we're making now is how do we actually accommodate that growth in a way that we're not replicating the mistakes that we've had in the past. So we're not building in places where there is going to be coastal erosion or there is going to be serious flooding. And then I guess the other part, which I referenced earlier, was that advocacy up to regional council and central government around better public transport options, especially to the north of our district. In Wellington, you've only got the train network goes as far as Waikanai, but then you've got Otaki, which is a community of around about 10,000 people who literally have one bus an hour that goes down to Waikanai. Levin's similar in terms of being serviced. So it's about how do we actually get people out of cars into public transport, because I think it's transport emissions are around about 60% of our district's emissions profile. So if we're going to make a dent in those, that's where we're going to be able to achieve it in terms of getting people out of cars and into public transport and improving our cycleway networks.
Do you think there is a sort of ignorance or, from our bureaucrats not to look that ahead? I'm not talking about the council, but I'm talking about in the Wellington sitting. Like you mentioned, Opotik, Haruwhanua and all those. And I think you were campaigning for a rail, and I think it's great because, it's a good connection. And, Linda knows that in West Auckland, we only have train going up to Swanson, but we got a train line up to, Helensville. But, are we not using those train things more? And people in Wellington are ignorant of that, Gwynn?
I think it all boils down to money, because central government's got to pay for it. So, and even, our regional council, they're looking at a business case. Well, they were looking at a business case to get new rolling stock to add more services on, but ultimately most of that was going to have to come from central government. So that's where the hold-up comes, is central government's obviously weighing up these projects all across the country and deciding where they want to put that money based on a whole lot of factors. Some of them will be down to actual, business cases that officials have put together, and some of it will come down to the politics of it as well, and that's the reality of these things too. So if you're like me, you kick up as big a fuss as you can, and you try and get the community all behind you and campaigning for it, and you try and be, as much as you can, be the loudest voice to try and get the best for your community.
Cool. Look, I know we are going over time, but last one round, and I'll start with Linda and then go around. But just some, key things or key messages that you see this year will be important. Linda, I know you are from West Auckland, and it's growing rapidly. There's so much development. I think developments are happening everywhere, which is great. But what do you think will be key message this year, for people out there, especially, obviously to encourage them to come and vote, but, what is the main issue that you see at the moment for your community?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues, which I've been campaigning and advocating for a long time, is a proper rapid transit network to the Northwest. And the Northwest is growing very rapidly. Just one development is 30,000 people up by Westgate, and it's the only metropolitan area that doesn't have a rapid transit network where there is shovel-ready money for an interim busway. So, and one of the ways that we're going to make, I think it's really important, is our annual plan is coming out at the end of February till the end of March for consultation, and there's going to be a climate action targeted rate. And, to put aside what people think we have to wait 10 to 15 years to do something, it is here. One of the biggest things we can do in Auckland is reduce our carbon emissions from cars. So part of that targeted rate will go towards better bus routes and more frequent, fast, reliable in South and West Auckland, and that will make a big difference. So that's something that people need to get really engaged in. It's about $1.20 a week for the average house, but it will contribute that, and also to growing many more trees in South Auckland. It has the least number of trees anywhere in Auckland, and that's another way we can suck the carbon out of the air. So that's going to be a big thing, our annual plan. And also the other big issue that we need people to be engaged in is that with the ongoing loss of revenue for Auckland, because we only take 47% of our rates from ratepayers, the rest is revenue. and that revenue has plummeted by $140 million just in the last lockdown from August to December. So we've got some big decisions to make, and I think that's going to be in the ongoing years is that revenue side of things, because we don't want to put up rates madly, but we do need to pay for growth, and we do need to keep up with what we've already got.
Sure. Shirish, down in Christchurch in your local community board, what do you think is the most important pressing issue at the moment?
Well, the pressing issue, I think, all over the country is a bit of voter empathy when it comes to local voting in the local elections. So my message is, please enroll, please study who your candidates are, and please go and vote. It does make a big difference to everyday lives, as we have discussed in the past.
Sure. Ella, in your Puketapapa local board, it's very well known, and you guys are doing great things. But what do you think is the pressing issue in your local board?
Yeah, we've got challenges similar to what we've already talked about today, but climate change will be one of them. But the growth issue that we're getting that's coming along with Kainga Ora build, to making sure there's a balance that's going to be within this community, so it doesn't actually just fall back, because your local area can get populated, but you need to make sure that the local people have jobs in the area as well. Otherwise, we're not going to be helping our communities by any means by just putting people into places to live, but nothing to go to work. I think the COVID-19 has created a big dent in all of us in our areas, big time. And I think there are challenges that the local boards are going to have to actually lift up a little bit too on how they use their funding resources and money that they do get. Infrastructure, I can't say enough about that. You build, but pretty much the infrastructure needs the money that goes with it as well. And I think there's going to be a lot of challenges, but don't want to scare people away to put their hand up to go onto local boards. It's still a great outcome just getting on there to help your community. So don't want to scare people from hearing all these things.
No, that's great. And Gwynn, last but not the least, and I know you are taking a break, but you're still connected with the community. So what in Kapiti Coast is the pressing issue that we'll see this year?
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, it's growth and making sure that we're growing well and that we have the infrastructure to go with it as well. As Linda was saying, they've got that development for 30,000 people just in one part of Auckland. We're looking at adding 30,000 people in Kapiti in the next 30 years. And that puts a scale of like our district council to Auckland in perspective, I think. But that's, we're a community of about 57,000 people. So we're looking at growing by more than half over 30 years. Yeah. And that has a big impact. Our schools are already overflowing. Pre-COVID, our train service was absolutely packed. You would be lucky to get a car park or a seat on the train sort of any time after 6 o'clock. We've got a bit of breathing space because of COVID. But you can see as life sort of returns to normal over the next couple of years, you can see all those pressures coming back. And I think people need to, look at who's standing, what they're proposing, what their vision is for the future of, their given area, and make a decision. One of the reasons I stood originally was thinking about all the opportunities that were coming up to make Kapiti a better place for my kids to eventually grow up and have a family of their own as well. And I guess one of the challenges this coming election is that there are these big reforms going on. You've got 3 waters, you've got the Resource Management Act reform, and you've got the review into the future for local government. And the big worry is that it's going to scare people off from wanting to get involved or wanting to vote, because they're sort of thinking that local government's not going to exist. I mean, there's always going to be local government is the thing I'd stress. And any changes are still another term away before they get implemented. So, if get involved now and you can help shape those things in the coming term.
Actually, Sunil, can I just add, I've been in local government since 1992, and in that 30 years, things have changed a lot. But one of the things that hasn't changed is that local government is really important, and it is not lesser than central government. But we have to work hand in hand with central government, because the people in our communities can't afford the first world life we want without the government helping us. So it is a partnership, and it's not a lesser role. And I think if anybody wants to put their hand up, there's lots of us people have been around that will always give people a helping hand and help mentor you when you get there, because we need the next generations to step up.
Sure. Thank you so much, Councillor Linda Cooper and Councillor Gwynn Compton, and local board member Ella Kumar, and community board member Shirish Paranjape. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it on a Sunday afternoon, evening. And, we hope we can get you back again closer to the time. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was our session for today on local politics, local body election. It's been great that you could join us today. Thank you very much for your time. And next week, we'll have another panel talking about various things that have happened during the week. I'm your host, Sunil Kaushal. Thank you for joining Weekend on Sunday on 20th of February, 2022. Good evening. Kia ora. Namaste.